Okay.
Okay, well,
Um,
good morning,
thank
everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Julia today. Our guest today is Julia Hudson, who has been with Canadian Hearing Services for 18 years, and for the past 5 years has served as the manager of the Hearing Care Counseling Program, a program for people 55 and over with hearing loss, where she oversees a dedicated team committed to empowering adults with hearing loss through counseling, education, and accessible support services. So we'll turn it over to Julia at this point.
thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this information with you. At the end of the presentation, I will share the name and contact information for the local counselor as well, for the Brant region, so you have someone directly in your area, as I am calling in from the London region. Okay, so why we're here today. So the real goal of sharing information about hearing loss is to keep us connected, to have good communication skills, and to get the most out of your life and enjoy the connections we make. I'm going to cover the services we provide here at Canadian Hearing Services. I want you to understand hearing health and the impact it might have on your life, and hearing health and communication. Canadian Hearing Services, our vision is to be the leading organization supporting deaf and hard of hearing Canadians by advocating for a barrier-free society. Our mission is to deliver industry-leading services and products that enable deaf and hard of hearing Canadians to overcome barriers to participation. We've been around since 1940. And many of our programs are free and not for profit. And then we do have a handful of fee for service, but still under that not for profit umbrella. Here's a list of all of the things. I will not go through all of them. These are all of the services we provide at Canadian Hearing Services. This alone would take me 30 minutes to explain all of them, so I will leave it on screen for a minute and maybe highlight a few of the different things we do. We have many counseling programs aside from the hearing care counseling program. We offer free mental health counseling for people with hearing loss. We have our general support services, which will help people with everyday challenges, maybe things like applying for ODSP, housing applications. We have a free speech language pathologist. It is a virtual service, but it is free through our funding. We have audiologists and hearing aid sales throughout the province at select locations as well. So what's the big deal? Oftentimes people say, oh, just put hearing aids in and you'll be able to hear just like that. If it was only that simple. What people don't know is that hearing loss sometimes separates us from interactions, from each other, from communicating and engaging in the things we love in our everyday life. So if we focus on gaining better communication, often the loss we have with our hearing feels less. So there are many causes for hearing loss. Here is just a few. There can be medication interactions that causes hearing loss. So you might have a medication that causes either ring in your ears or a change in your hearing. Many times it can be an accident or some kind of physical trauma, like a hit to your head or a car accident. It could be a tumor or having a stroke or many other physical alternative injuries. It can be genetic. We see people that have the DNA that creates hearing loss later in life at birth, or they have some kind of disease, maybe with a high fever that causes the hearing loss. Noise exposure. They say anything over 80 decibels for an hour or more can cause permanent hearing loss. So that could be working in a factory. It could be doing yard work without ear protection. It could be doing construction. There is even some concerns about exposure to things like concerts and loud noises. So all of that noise adds up and can cause that permanent damage. There's a link to diabetes. So sometimes with people, if their sugar is not stable or is not under control, that there is a connection between the diabetes and hearing loss. But I think the most frequent is age. So as we get older and all that noise that we've had into our ear canal, all of that noise going into our ears creates damage over time. So they say age-related hearing that loss starts at the age of 55. But doesn't mean that it's sudden or immediate, but that hearing loss starts to become noticeable around the age of 55. And it generally gets worse over time. I'm sure everyone knows someone with hearing loss, and if you take a second and think, what would those warning signs be? Maybe it's yourself, maybe it's someone you care about, and you think, what was the first thing I noticed? So sometimes it's people asking them to repeat themselves or speak louder. So it might just be, pardon, I didn't catch that. Can you speak up? Um, the impression that people aren't speaking clearly. So a lot of times people will think, well, that person doesn't enunciate very well. They don't, speak clearly for me. Things sound mumbled or blurred together. There could be misunderstandings, and sometimes these can be comical. I think we can all think of a time where we misheard something that didn't make sense or that made you kind of chuckle, saying, "What did they just say?" But sometimes those misunderstandings can lead to some severe consequences, like missed appointments, hurt feelings, things like that. There's an increased trouble hearing when there's background noise. So this is often what people will notice. They'll say, "Oh, like I'm sitting at a table, maybe at a wedding or an event, or maybe even a place of worship, and you're having trouble hearing because of other noise around. So you're not picking up the speech and the language that's being said, and because of all this extra noise." Turning up the TV volume. This could also be the radio in your car, or anything else you're listening to, maybe your phone if you're listening to music or a podcast. But oftentimes the TV just slowly creeps up one by one. It used to maybe be at 20, now it's at 25, now it's at 30. It doesn't take long for those volumes to creep. Um, some people note that they have difficulty hearing soft voices. This can be oftentimes women's voices, and in a little bit I'll explain why, but children are another one. So people will say, I can't hear my grandkids. I know they're talking, but I'm not understanding what they're saying because of those soft voices. Misunderstandings on the telephone. We've seen an increase in this with cell phones, although cell phones have really tried to create programs and settings that help with that. If you're not sure how to navigate those or set them up to your hearing aids, cell phones can be very difficult to hear. And many times, the sound coming through the cell phone is condensed, so we don't get the full benefit of the language and speech like we would in person. The other signs here are things like fatigue. So if you're at an event and you've been there a long time listening and struggling to listen, you might feel like you're getting tired. You can't pay attention to the whole conversation. You find yourself wandering off because you missed something and you're not following along. Many times people will start to withdraw and isolate themselves, spending more and more time alone and stop doing the activities they really enjoy. And last on that list is frustration. So a lot of times people get frustrated with interactions in public, with speaking with friends and family, feeling excluded. So hearing loss is treatable, um, but on average, people wait 3 to 7 years before they seek help. That's a long time to have hearing loss and not ask for any support. The problem with this is, like maybe you've heard that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. It is very similar with our nerve and our central nervous system in our ears. If we're not stimulating the nerve in our ears and creating sound and stimulating that part of our system, then oftentimes once we do get treatment, it's only partially recoverable. The damage is kind of done, and you can't get the full benefit of hearing aids or amplification or other support. So, what does treating hearing loss do? Many people report a greater sense of self-worth. They feel better about themselves, more confident. They feel more independent. They're able to make phone calls or interact with people and do more things themselves. We often see this in marriages that the person with the stronger hearing will often take on more responsibility until that person gets the amplification or the support they need with their hearing loss, and then things tend to balance out a bit more. There's an improved physical and mental health. So people are out doing more things. They're taking that exercise class. They're going for walks. They're engaging with their friends. They feel more stimulated mentally and physically healthier. And as I kind of mentioned before, they have better friends and family relationships. Um, One side effect of hearing loss sometimes is paranoia. People will often think, well, they're talking about me. And this can cause a real rift in friendships and with family members. If they think someone else is talking about them or saying things that they don't understand, they often stop engaging and stop participating in family and friend outings, which can cause a bit of separation and loneliness. 90% of people with hearing loss can improve their communication with properly fitted hearing aids and rehabilitative counseling. So, the hearing care counseling program here at CHS would be considered a rehabilitative counseling program. So, we do provide services to people 55 and over. It is a free service, and we will come right to your home or meet you somewhere in the community. So, using a service like that helps with an individual plan to meet your hearing goals can help increase your self-worth, increase independence, and have you better engaged. Um, Properly fitted hearing aids also help you just with those everyday activities. They generally help you, have a simple conversation with maybe someone you don't know. It makes you feel like you can hear the world around you. It makes you safer from falls, as well as keeping you interested and engaged with others around you. Okay, a bit of an anatomy lesson. This is your ear. I'm going to briefly discuss how the ear hears. Um, I'll try to keep it so it's not, a master class in ear, and I probably couldn't do that anyway. We call this outer part of your ear the bowl. So the shape of the ear is actually there to collect sound. That is why our ears look the way they do. So as sound waves come closer, the ear itself channels them into our ear canal. The sound travels down the ear canal and bounces off the eardrum. This then causes movements in the three bones of our ears, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Those vibrations then send a message to our cochlea. The cochlea is filled with hair cells and fluid. The fluid is very similar to spinal fluid. Those vibrations from the bone sends a wave through our cochlea. That wave of fluid and hair cell movement stimulates our auditory nerve, and our brain says, I know what that word means. Quite an intense process for such a small part of our anatomy. But the importance is that at any point in that travel, there could be something that stops us from hearing properly. Just going to leave it on this slide. This is the same explanation that I just gave about the hair cells and the moving, but I'll leave it there for people um, who want to read it quickly. So when we do an audiogram, we're testing those sounds that travel through our ear canal. When we test that hearing, there are different levels of hearing loss along the way. So normal hearing is anywhere from -10 to 25 decibels. And then if it's you're hearing at 40 decibels, that's considered a mild hearing loss. 41 to 55 is moderate. 56 to 70 is a moderate to severe. 71 to 90 is severe. And 91 and over is profound. So an example of profound would be not being able to hear a jet taking off or a plane taking off. Severe might be not hearing the smoke alarm very well. Um, and anywhere in between, there are all kinds of sounds like lawnmowers, children crying. So we do gauge our hearing loss based on these levels, but we never actually consider a hearing loss a straight line. Most people's hearing actually has a bit of a wave to it or a motion to it. During that hearing test, um, you would get something called a word recognition score. So I don't know if anyone in the group has had a hearing test, but they often will give you single syllable words that you have to repeat back. So they'll cover their mouth and they'll say things like hot dog, and you'll have to repeat that word back. The reason they do this is to see how well you understand speech at a comfortable level. This word recognition score will tell us how well you do with hearing aid and amplification, as well as if there's any nerve damage or other concerns in the ear that would not make you a good candidate for hearing aids. This can be really difficult information to receive. If you receive a word recognition score of 50, that means even in the perfect environment with the best hearing aids, you're still only going to hear 50% of language. So we always hope for a high word recognition score. That means the ear is functioning well. It just needs more sound to do so. When I mentioned causes of hearing loss, we talked about age-related hearing loss. This is generally something we call presbycusis. Um, it's when we can't hear certain sounds like S, CH, TH, and F. They're very soft, high-pitched sounds. So if you want to make those sounds to yourself, s, sh, they're very soft sounds. They often appear in the high range of your audiogram, so around 4,000 or 6,000 hertz. Um, this is much harder to hear in those ranges. So women's voices tend to fall in this range. Those children's voices I mentioned tend to fall in this range. Um, and it makes it a little more difficult to hear certain speech sounds. Where this ties into that age-related hearing loss is oftentimes when we're listening to people, we can hear them talking. You can say, I know you're talking, but your words are getting mumbled or I'm missing pieces. That's because of this presbycusis, because we're missing specific sounds. So some words you might catch right away. Other words you're like, what was that? I didn't catch that. And it makes it hard to hear things like dates, times, locations. I've noticed people really struggle with proper names if they don't know who someone's talking about or where they're talking about. So restaurants, city location names, people's first names and last names. Um, as you can imagine, this can have some really large consequences. If you think about maybe a dementia screening or an interview or meeting with your doctor about your health, if you're not hearing all of those sounds properly, you might misinterpret, mishear, or misunderstand something that's being told to you. On the previous slide, I mentioned that we don't look at hearing losses in a straight line. This is a perfect example. So this audiogram starts in the normal range, and then it dips down to a moderate to severe, and then it comes back up to a moderate. I would describe this hearing loss as normal, sloping to a moderate to severe. So we don't say, oh, I have 40% hearing or 20% hearing, because it's kind of misleading when your hearing is good in one range, but struggling in another. Um, because of this presbycusis, this low frequency range is actually in the normal range. They can hear quite well. Um, this might come in real life and show up as maybe if you think about watching the news and there's a male anchor and a female anchor. Someone with this type of hearing loss would probably hear the male anchor no problem, pick up all the language, understand what they're saying. But when the female speaks, they might struggle a little bit more because of the frequency of their voice. So a lot of times this is where that people don't enunciate feeling comes out, that people don't speak clearly. A lot of that could be actually the hearing loss itself and not the person speaking. This is a visual of what hearing loss looks like. So when we hear perfectly, we can hear every piece of it. When there's hearing loss, we hear parts of it, but not the whole thing. This last column here would be what we consider deafness, when there's no sound whatsoever. I'm going to take a minute and talk about hearing aids. I know There are so many options. This can be a very difficult um, process to go through and a lot of choices to make. I think there's also a lot of uncertainty when learning about hearing aids for the first time. My hearing aids are in the drawer is the title of the slide. I think I've seen so many people over the years that either they or someone else has hearing aids that they don't wear, or they're not sure of how to use them properly. Again, this is something the hearing care counseling program can help with. We can meet with you in your home, practice insertion. We can help you stream Bluetooth. We can help you understand the different features and possibly the app on your cell phone to help with your hearing aid. They take time and patience. So most hearing aids have a 3-month return or exchange policy. So sometimes it's 2 months to return, 3 months to exchange. Um, and that's because it takes time to adjust, especially if you've waited those 7 years to get that hearing aid for the first time. All of a sudden, the world is much louder than it used to be, and it takes time to get used to that sound, as well as the feeling of something in your ear. Their effectiveness can depend on the type and degree of your hearing loss. So the style isn't as important as what is happening with your ear. It sometimes can be difficult to adjust to that sound. Um, at the same time, it can be very beautiful. I know I've heard people say, I didn't realize how many birds I had in my backyard. Or I didn't realize my tap was dripping. And that's not as fun because then you have to fix the tap. However, all those new sounds can be really quite exciting or they can be overwhelming. Um, if you go from not hearing anything or hearing much less to hearing all of those sounds again, it can take some time to get used to that. Communication devices. So this is something we support here at Canadian Hearing Services. The Hearing Care Counseling Program, because we're a non-biased and a not-for-profit, will make suggestions on these types of things. Um, but all based on what your goals are. So if you want to try one of ours, we do have some demos that we take around to people's homes that they can try out in person. We don't leave them there for infection control purposes, but if you wanted to try a doorbell that flashes or you wanted an amplified phone, we can bring those out to you and have them set up and then help you navigate which one's the best fit for you. I will go through the list quickly to just kind of explain what each one does and why it's a benefit to people with hearing loss. So we have amplified home phones for those who still have home phones. This is becoming a mixed bag. Some people have them, some people have gone straight to cell phones. But the amplified home phones usually have a tone control. So again, back to that high frequency hearing loss, when you can't hear that as well, we can adjust the home phone to actually amplify the sounds that you need and not just make it a blaringly loud device. It has a volume control to increase volume. It has an amplified ringer so that if you can't hear the phone ringing, we can make it up to 95 decibels. So if you remember on that chart, that's quite loud. Um, and then it also usually has a visual ringer, so some kind of flashing light to know that the phone is ringing. There's an audible ring signaler, so we can actually have just the ringer for a phone or any kind of noise that streams just kind of a flashing light or makes it louder. This white device here with the black headset is a personal amplifier. So some people, due to dexterity, due to financial restraints, or sometimes for some of our clients with dementia or other physical limitations, do not want hearing aids, but they need the amplification. These are personal amplifiers, so they have similar features to hearing aids. They have a microphone that picks up sound, it streams it to the headset. There is tone control and volume control. Some of these come with a TV streamer so that you can stream the TV to your headset amplified. We have standalone TV listening systems that can actually amplify all of the TV sounds coming in. There are home alerting systems that can be smoke, carbon monoxide, doorbell, other auditory alarms in your house. So it could be things like your buzzer for the front door. It could be something set beside the stove so you know if it's beeping. So there's all kinds of those systems as well. Many of them are customizable. So if you want something that streams the doorbell and your cell phone, but you can hear your smoke alarm, we can adjust those to make sure they fit that need. Um, some people just need the alarm clock piece of these home alerting systems. So there are um, alarm clocks that have usually three pieces, some kind of visual alert, so a flashing light. Sometimes they plug into a lamp. Um, they'll have a what's called a bed shaker. So you can see in the bottom right corner, there's a gray little disc that goes between your mattress and your bed spring. And when the alarm goes off, it shakes your bed. And then they often have some kind of auditory alarm with a tone control and a volume control. So if you're worried about missing appointments, you're not sleeping properly because you're always worried you're going to miss your alarm, something like this is quite useful. Some people just need a doorbell signaler. So if you're getting things like your medication delivered or you're expecting guests and you want to make sure that you know when they're arriving, there is visual and auditory doorbells available. Visual smoke and carbon monoxide systems. And then there's something called tinnitus sound conditioner. So those who have tinnitus know what tinnitus is. If you don't know what it is and you don't have it, be grateful. It can be quite disruptive, but tinnitus is that ongoing sound all the time. The ringing in your ears, the buzzing, the humming. So they do make sound conditioners for tinnitus that helps kind of balance out that sound or calm that sound down. Um, Many apps or cell phones now have that as an option to download as an app as well. So what does this mean for our communication? So we've talked about what hearing loss is, we've talked about some hearing aids, some other devices that are available, but what does this mean for your communication? So hearing loss can have a profound effect on your social, psychological, and physical health. It doesn't matter when you got the hearing loss. You could have been undiagnosed until recently. You could still have concerns, but not actually have it figured out, or you could have hearing loss for most of your life. These impacts don't change, and sometimes they are situational. So as things change in your life or the world changes around us, this can impact you. A social impact would be less engagement, problems with people you're working or volunteering with, not participating in as many activities. So you're starting to withdraw and spend more and more time isolated and alone. Psychological impacts can be things like you might feel depressed, you might feel anger. And I know in my years here, anger is always one of those words that people are like, oh, I'm frustrated or I find this difficult, but it's okay that they get angry too. Sometimes these things, hearing loss can change your life. It can change your interactions. It can leave you unsure. And it's okay to get angry about that. But there are things we can do to help with it. Some people feel embarrassed about their hearing loss. They feel like they have to excuse it or make up for it. They take the burden of that. Um, some people are mistrustful. I think I mentioned that earlier. There's some paranoia, there's some uncertainty about if people are talking about you, but all of these things together add stress. A physical impact. Sometimes people will report headaches, muscle tension, increased blood pressure. Sometimes people even say they start sweating in conversations. A lot of that can be, the stress of trying to listen really hard, the pressure that's put on either by people around you or yourself about that hearing loss. And these can cause physical outcomes. So the stress related to hearing loss includes communication. So these could be like the factors like how noisy your room is. It could be how people are talking, if they're facing you, if there's poor lighting, if you're able to see someone's face and read their lips and facial expressions. Um, speech reading is what we call it here, is when you actually read someone's lips and hand movements and facial gestures to understand what's being said. What many people with hearing loss don't know is they do this naturally. Without training, they just start to pick up this skill. They're able to look and say, "Oh, I think I understand what they're saying." We really saw this during COVID when people started wearing masks, how many people lost the ability to communicate easily and clearly. Um, so again, something that happened later in life, some people use those skills their whole life, and then once COVID hit, they lost that ability to use that skill. A high level of concentration is required when we're communicating. So that can cause stress just from having to do so much of it, and your visual attention. So how much you're paying attention and having to use those skills, and how able you are to do that in the environment you're in. So again, the most important thing here is that we need to focus on the communication and not the loss of hearing. So some key things to remember here is that communication takes both people. It's not a one-way thing. Both people in the conversation need to participate. Um, if everyone's communicating and using good communication strategies, then both sides actually get something out of that relationship. A lot of times, people with hearing loss think, I have to make up for my loss. But if both people are participating and trying, the communication goes better and nobody leaves with negative feelings. So, what can you do? You can get someone's attention. It could be tapping them on the shoulder, waving their hand, saying their name, making sure they're looking at you. So making sure you're facing them so they can see you. And then again, use strategies that they either recommend, like slowing down, speaking up, repeating parts, rephrasing things that that they might have misheard. Instead of just repeating the same thing over and over, try to say it in a new way to catch their attention and have them understand. Again, an overview about the hearing care counseling program. Um, so we do provide home visits, we provide education, we do hearing screening clinics. So if you aren't sure if you have a hearing loss, but you're not sure you want to go to someone who sells hearing aids, you're welcome to call us for a free hearing screening. This program does not sell hearing aids, and we would work with you to find a person to provide that service if that's the direction you want to go. The whole goal of this program is to help you work on your goals around your hearing loss and support you through that journey. So we are here for self-referrals. You can also refer a friend or family member. But again, it's your guided you guide the length of the engagement, and you provide us the tools that the goals that you want to reach. So we don't go in and say, you're going to do this. This is really you led, and we just help you get there. So, as promised at the beginning, Rose is our local hearing care counselor for the Brant region. This is her contact information here. You can also send information to our general link as well. Um, Or we do have a hearing care counseling at chs.ca, which is an alternative if you're not in the Brant region, but would like to serve someone outside of there. We do have 30 counselors across the province in all major cities. So it is an Ontario funded program. It does not provide service outside of Ontario at this time. So I wanted to thank you all and then open it up for questions.
Just before we move on to questions, I just want